What is the hardest part about being married and being business partners?
What's your wish list? Where do you want to be in 5 years?
What's the future of subsidies on Cover California?
Today we're looking at the professional journey of John and Teresa Heaton. They built Heaton & Associates as a family-run business after recognizing that small and mid-sized companies needed better support with insurance and risk management.
It's kind of a no-brainer, and payroll services are relatively cheap.
A good accountant, a good attorney, and a good insurance agent. You want to have all those three in your pocket because those are super important to make sure that you're protected.
I think with that mindset, you're unstoppable.
Welcome to Doing Business in the Inland Empire, a podcast that focuses on businesses that are located here in the Riverside, San Bernardino County. Today we decided to do a little different. My guest today is Teresa Heaton. So if you guys don't know, that's my wife. And we're going to be asking each other questions about what it's like to work together as business owners. And it's kind of a unique way that we operate. And we thought it'd be fun to ask each other questions and kind of go back and forth. So I'm going to start off. Again, we've been married for 26 years. We have 6 kids. We have one grandchild, and we have a daughter-in-law. And we love our family. We're very family focused. So it kind of adds to the uniqueness of our situation, having so many outside activities, but we're also running a business at the same time and doing it together. So Teresa, welcome Teresa to the show. Teresa, what is the hardest part about being married and being business partners?
That's a hard one. I think the hardest thing really is making sure that when we're home, and when we're at work, we're at work. It's easy to get caught up in work outside of business hours, especially when we're so busy during the day that we don't constantly talk back and forth. And I think it's easy at night to say, oh, I got to tell you about this, or oh, I got to tell you about this, instead of being home. So I think that's probably the hardest thing, is just kind of separating those two worlds.
I agree. I think the hardest part is turning it off.
Yeah.
We'll be, supposed to be hanging out with their children, and yet we're talking business because of whatever we got planned for the next day or the next week, or we're excited about a client. And that's the biggest challenge, really, is turning it off when we're home and when we're with the kids. Yeah. So I agree with that.
Yeah. So kind of along those same lines, how do you, because I do think you're better at this than I am, how do you separate family from business time?
Like I just said, I try to turn it off. When I get home, now unfortunately with cell phones, that makes it more difficult because you're always accessible. And if I have a client that texts me or emails me, I so badly just want to get back to them. But I really try to engage with the kids and focus directly on them when we're home. And I think that's the key for me, and is making sure that I'm the dad who can pick them up at school and take them to practice. And they see me doing that. And I think that's really important.
I like that too.
Yeah.
Or you to pick up. I also think one thing that has helped us as we've gotten years into the business is using tools.
Sure.
We'll have these ideas or these thoughts after hours, and being able to write them down and come back to them later during business hours, I think is essential. So getting in the habit of like using task tools or something like that, to where we can not lose the idea, but write it down, keep it somewhere that we'll go back and then focus on this later.
And you've got me into that. That's something that you definitely brought to the table, is making sure that I keep my tasks in order, and that know when the proper time is to go after those.
So I've got another good question for you. What advice would you give couples thinking about starting a business together?
Yeah, no, I think...
Don't do it.
No, I didn't do it. I mean, I think... have that conversation. Have that deep conversation where you talk about, you probably already have your good idea. You already have the service you want to provide. But doing it together is a whole different element that you bring into the business, because business conversations become personal conversations.
Yeah.
And it's hard to not take things personal. There are things that, your business partner. So sometimes as a business partner, you got to say, this is something that we need to work on or get better at. When it's a relationship and a marriage, it's hard to not take that conversation personal. I think the biggest advice is up front, have those conversations about how you guys are going to talk when a corrective action needs to be taken place, or you disagree on something, how you're going to manage that conversation without
Yeah.
taking it personal, because all of a sudden it's personal and now you're sleeping in two different bedrooms because you're mad about a business conversation.
Yeah.
That's never happened to us.
For the record, yeah, never.
Never happened to us. But you could see that happening and you could see why it doesn't work. And
Yeah.
I've got plenty of friends who are business owners who say they can never work with their wives because of that, probably that key element.
I definitely think all that's true. I think also I would add to that is setting expectations up ahead of time. I think not being on the same page with certain roles or expectations can set you up for failure. So
Yeah.
if you, as part of that conversation, when you're thinking about how you're going to move forward in this new venture, I guess maybe designating who's going to actually be
Yeah.
what, so that you have really defined roles, so that you're not overlapping and not feeling like, well, you know, I thought this way or I thought this and now it's not right. So
Or he was supposed to do that. Why
Or-
did that happen? Yeah, I totally agree.
yeah, I think that would
Yep.
save a lot of heartache down the line, just those delineations and expectations.
Well, let's talk about our story when we first started. What was the biggest challenge in the first year?
Oh,
There were a lot.
there were a lot. I think anytime you start a business like we did, kind of from the ground up, you know, obviously you're always worried about, no matter how much money you have in the bank, you're always worried about finances, right? And how things are going to progress. But I think that if you plan right, again, back to planning, that can be secondary. I think we were a little unique because you had started the business first and I came on, you know, a year later
Sure. Yep.
and started kind of in my role. So we were a little unique in that things were a little different. But, you know, every business starting out is, oh my gosh, where are we going to find business? How are we going to start? How are we going to get going? I guess I don't have a really great answers other than those kind of worries that are on anyone's mind. What would you say? What would you think that our biggest?
Well, I think for us specifically, it was where are we going to find business? Again, being an insurance agency, where we're going to find business, but also having enough money to survive. You mentioned money,
Yeah.
but I think that was the biggest thing. I think we were undercapitalized.
Yeah.
So every month I was worried about the next month, how I was going to pay rent
Yeah.
and how we were going to pay our bills and feed our kids and the whole time hoping they don't even notice
Yeah.
that we're struggling in this first year.
Yeah.
I think that was the biggest challenge for us. And then in the insurance world, you know, you really count on renewals.
Yeah.
You know, it's 3-4 years before those renewals kind of add up to where you can kind of take a deep breath and go, okay, we haven't made it, but we've got through that first phase.
Yeah.
But I think for us, it was probably the undercapitalized and then and that added to the stress of finding instant business that we needed to find.
So what is one mistake you think that we made early on that actually helped us grow?
We talked about this one. I think we said yes to everything. You know,
Yeah, we did.
We did. And I think when I mean that, we were selling every type of insurance possible and we were taking on every client. And the problem with that is now you're becoming a jack of all trade in the insurance world. And you're taking on clients that, like today, we wouldn't take on. We're not necessarily picky, but we do. We've got to be a good fit. It's got to be a good fit for us to work together on both sides. And when we first started, we said we just took on everybody.
Yeah.
You know, the benefit of that was it really helped us figure out where we wanted to narrow it down to. And that's when we narrowed it down to commercial insurance and health insurance.
Yeah.
Whereas before, again, we were doing everything. We realized, you know, after a few years, we didn't really want to do home and auto. So Teresa, what makes our company different from other insurance agencies?
I guess I jumped the gun. That's kind of what I was going to say, is that from an insurance standpoint, I love the minutia. I love the details. I always have. And I like the planning aspect of life. And I think having those conversations about not just where are you now, where's your business now, and what risk exposure do you have now, but also where are you going to go? What does next year look like for you? What's your wish list? Where do you want to be in 5 years? Because that could be significantly different from where you are today. And that's awesome. That's super awesome. But there might be some things that we could shore up now that will make that transition or that growth easier from a risk management standpoint or exposure. And I've said it before, you know, insurance is not the only way to mitigate risk. There's a lot of risk that you can mitigate just by procedures and operations. And I love talking that through as well, just to kind of say, well, have you thought about this? Or maybe this is down the road. So I think our willingness and desire to really have those conversations kind of sets us apart. I think you could go online and find 100 different insurance, either agencies, brokerage, direct carriers that will sell you any type of insurance.
Right.
I mean, it's all there, but you're not necessarily going to get those in-depth discussions about, hey, this is where I am now and this is where I want to go. What's the best way to get there? And what's the best coverage for me? And honest education about, do I really need this or not? I think you can always find someone to sell you anything, We went hiking a couple of years ago, my Joshy. Do you remember Joshy and I took that backpack trip? It was so fun. And we hiked out to the bridge to nowhere. There's literally a bridge to nowhere. You can't access it by vehicles.
Right.
And it's a beautiful bridge. It's gorgeous. It's back, I think we started in Azusa. But I think about that too. How did they spend the money, get the manpower, build this bridge in the middle of nowhere, and then not connect anything? It's the same with insurance. You don't need every type of insurance. You don't. So having these conversations about what you need is really important.
Teresa, why is reviewing insurance annually so important for businesses?
In my experience, most business owners, you are making decisions as you go, and insurance is once you have it and you feel secure and comfortable in it, which is awesome. That's the whole point of insurance. You forget about it. You just know, oh, I've got it. I'm not worried about it. So sometimes you make business choices or business decisions and change something in your business that you don't necessarily mention to insurance. I've had clients move. They've changed entire locations and forgot to tell me. Like, well, we need to fix that. An annual review of insurance is really just a great check-in to make sure that coverage is still accurate, adequate, and correctly identifying what we're trying to insure.
What's the biggest myth about business insurance?
I would have to say that one size fits all. Every risk is just a little unique, a little different. So the idea that one plumber is the same as the next plumber is same as the next plumber,
Sure.
it might not necessarily be true. So that would be my first comment off the top of my head, is that the insurance is insurance. Not to harp on this so much, but I think that's why those real conversations are really important about, hey, this is what I do, this is my operation, but these are who my clients are. This is the type of work I perform.
Right.
All of that can change your insurance needs. So
I agree.
All right, my turn.
Yes, your turn.
So why is health insurance such a big challenge for small business today?
Well, the main thing is cost. It's a large barrier for entry for a business owner that hasn't offered health insurance to their employees. They get sticker shock. And if you're under 50 employees, you don't have to offer it.
Yeah.
Per government guidelines. But as a good business owner who wants to attract good employees, you feel this obligation to do it. But when you first see that cost, you're like, holy smokes, that's a lot of money. And is this something that I really want to offer? And I think that's probably the biggest challenge, because there's a lot of carriers still out in California and the Inland Empire. There's still a lot of plans that are available. It's just expensive. And with health insurance being a political tool that all these politicians are using, for the time being, it's only going to go up until they figure out some way to bring it down. And I think, so to answer your question, the biggest challenge would be costs.
So along those same lines, though, this is kind of a side note to that question.
Sure.
Are employers required to offer a certain level of coverage, or can they just offer whatever they want?
Well, they got to offer at least a bronze plan. So a bronze plan is the minimum level they have to cover, and they have to pay for at least 50% of the employee's premium.
Okay.
They don't have to pay for dependents if they don't want to. They absolutely can if they want to. They don't have to offer dental or vision if they don't want to. It's up to them. But if they offer medical, you have to offer at least a bronze. And the way the Affordable Care Act has got it, you got bronze, silver, gold, and platinum plans, bronze being the cheapest, but you have to offer at least a bronze level plan.
So the next question, what options do small businesses have that many don't know about?
Well, everybody's afraid of deductibles. And I get it. The last thing that you want to do is have something serious happen. Then you've got this large out-of-pocket expense that you have to pay for. But I think a lot of business owners and employees are afraid of high deductible plans. But there are ways to make a high deductible plan work for you. And I don't think that's sold or talked about enough. Mm-hmm. If you have a high deductible plan, let's say it's got a $5,000 deductible, what are you going to do if something serious happens? Well, there's other cheaper options to get that paid for. One, you can have, we work with Colonial Life. You can do supplemental plans. And a lot of their plans will pay for that deductible, and it's a lot cheaper to sign up that way than as opposed to sign up for a gold or a platinum plan. The other way is set up, look at this HSA plan. HSAs are great. They're underutilized. I know that's something that the current administration really wants to focus on is HSA plans. We haven't heard about what they're going to do yet, but you can put money aside tax-free. So get a cheaper bronze plan, and then you fund your HSA account, and then you use that to pay for any medical costs.
What HSA? What is HSA?
HSA is a health spending account that you can set up with a financial institution. Individuals can put, I think, up to $4,000. Families can put $8,700 a year into it, and they grow. You can invest it any way you want it, and it can grow tax-free and can be used tax-free as long as you use it for medical purposes. If you don't use it for medical purposes, then it becomes a taxable event, and you can talk to your accountant about that if that comes. But again, I think it's an underutilized option to make the overall health insurance experience cheaper.
Cheaper, yeah, that's interesting.
Yeah.
Okay, one more for you. What trends are we seeing in employee benefits right now?
It's interesting. It's high deductible plans, I think, are becoming more of a trend just because health insurance is so expensive. There's the unknown. Trends we don't know yet because it's such a political animal. Again, the current administration has this idea of using HSAs more or making them more available, but they're currently distracted. So we don't know exactly what that's going to entail. The scary thing is what's going to happen with subsidies. So those who are on the exchange through Covered California, the federal subsidies have almost all been eliminated. Now California operates independently, and they've kept a lot of those subsidies in place. But I would worry about that. I'd worry about what's the future of subsidies on Covered California. What I think the trend is going to happen, I think, is more employees are going to have to rely on their employer for health insurance. I think the exchanges are going to be harder and harder to qualify for subsidies, which is going to make it more important that the employers offer it affordable plans that the employees can afford.
Interesting.
Yeah. So we're going to switch gears a little bit and talk about payroll. That is a new product that we started offering within the last 12 months. We're excited. Kind of goes hand in hand with health insurance and workers' comp. So Teresa, why should companies outsource payroll instead of doing it themselves?
It comes down to it's so much easier to have someone take care of that and not have to worry about it. Their payroll, by nature of what it is, you are reporting to the federal government and to the IRS how much you are paying, your employees are paying in taxes, and you as a business owner are paying in payroll taxes. And that's a lot of stress to lay on a business owner's shoulders with all the other things that a business owner has to worry about. So for this one, it's kind of a no-brainer, and payroll services are relatively cheap for what you are, the peace of mind and making sure that your payroll is filed timely, accurately, and the taxes paid without you having to worry about it. So it's really such a no-brainer for a business owner just to get that off of your shoulders and not have to have that stress. So it comes back to peace of mind.
Yeah, I agree.
I think everything that we do for our business, our whole business is structured around how can we make life easier for business owners. And payroll was a natural addition to that just because it's another source of worry, concern, and stress for business owners. So it was a good fit for adding that service. How does our new payroll product tie into insurance and benefits, especially on your end of things?
Well, it works for both because you look at workers' comp. Workers' comp is the administration of workers' comp is a function of payroll, and it ties into each other. It ties into the cost of payroll. So you want your workers' comp policy working with your payroll company to help with the reporting so that you don't have to worry about a nasty audit at the end of the year, but also to make sure that that what you're paying each month is correct. And then also with benefits, it ties in. It's a function of health insurance and employee benefits because it's a payroll deduction. And having that all in one place makes complete sense because then all the systems are talking to each other easily. A lot of the big payroll companies introduced this, throughout the last, 20, 30 years. And they do it pretty good. But the problem with the big payroll companies is they're all located in different states and their departments are located in different states. One of the advantages that we have is it's all right here. We're not big, we're a little office, but that almost makes it easier to do this because it's easily just to get up and, hey, so we need to make sure this is all tied together. And that's how we get all three products to work together. So it's been very effective for our clients that have been utilizing that.
Okay, so continuing along,
Yep.
What advice would you give someone starting their first business?
First thing I'd do is I'd pray about it. If they have faith to pray, I'd have them pray about it. I'd have them have a deep conversation with their spouse to especially if they're coming from a W-2 job where they're getting a paycheck every 2 weeks or whenever their pay cycle is, to say that's going to stop. Do you have enough capital to maintain yourself for a certain period of time? You got to figure out what that period of time is. Maybe each business is a little different based on the uniqueness of it. If you're starting a business, you probably already think you have a good idea and a good service to provide. So that kind of goes without saying. I love what my friend Steve Busby says about having a good accountant, a good attorney, and a good insurance agent. You want to have all those three in your pocket because those are super important to make sure that you're protected when you're starting this business, but also that you're not missing anything.
Yeah.
When it comes to the back office side of things. And I think that's one of the main things business owners forget about is now they are the back office.
Yep.
They're so excited to sell whatever they're going to be selling, but they figure out there's this whole part that they don't want to do. They realize that there's a whole part that they forgot about in the back office and making sure that is taken care of when you start. And I think that'd be probably the biggest advice I'd give. What about you?
I would only add that it's good to have a group, right? It's good to, I don't want to say mentor, although a mentor is a fabulous idea, but it's been so awesome to have other business owners to chat things through and just to kind of bounce things off of. And maybe it's not even business owners, but having people in your inner circle that you can talk about things with and kind of bounce ideas, brainstorm. It's just good to not solely have to rely on yourself. I really think that you need to have a good,
it's like circle of influence.
I don't know, your own gang, your group of friends, even if it's just, friends that aren't entrepreneurs or don't have any advice in that sphere of things, but people that you can rely on for good advice and good life experience, I think, too. I wouldn't limit myself just to specific business owners, but having those people in your circle that you can depend on and rely on is integral to make anything work, I think.
Well, and I think of my dad, early on in our career, my sales career, I relied on my dad. I would call him all the time, or he'd call me, and we'd talk through, sales cycles and the best way to prospect. And he was really important for me, at least in my early success in sales. So absolutely. I think it's extremely important we have somebody like that.
I talk business with whoever I can talk business with because I am fascinated by all business types and the organization, the growth. I love that. So I think it's fascinating, but also that just having that group behind you just creates another feeling of foundation and gives you a good structure to go forward and move.
I love it. Okay, last question. What separates businesses that succeed long-term from those that don't?
Oh, this is a great question. One of the things that I feel like you and we've tried hard to teach our kids is perseverance and grit.
Yeah.
I think that's one thing that's been, I roll my eyes and I think we just said it this morning about one of our kids.
Yeah.
Not going to say who, but that our kids are so spoiled. Our kids have it so easy. We have been able to give them a life that is pretty comfortable.
Right.
And so making sure that they have opportunities to learn perseverance and grit and push through when it's painful, and that there's a difference between being uncomfortable and being in pain. But I think those having the ability to persevere and that determination and the diligence, right? Being able to disciplined enough to push through the pain is essential for entrepreneurs.
Yeah.
I think because it is going to be painful at times.
Yep.
You are going to disagree. Like if you are working with
Or a partner, just any
or
partner.
a partner, anyone, you might disagree, and those disagreements aren't always easy to get through or to solve. Or so having perseverance and just having the faith in yourselves that you can get through it, and that every seemingly setback, right, might be an opportunity to get to the next level. I like that mindset. And I think every entrepreneur that has been successful has been able to see the opportunity in the sacrifice and in the problem, right, that arises. And I think with that mindset, you're unstoppable.
Right. Well, I've always said this. Every business owner, when they first start, there's a wall that they hit. And that could be within the first 6 months. That could be in 3 years. Maybe it's at the 5-year mark. And they've got to make a decision if they want to get over that wall, push through that wall, or they're going to do something different. And go back to to where they're an employee again. And that's that grit and that determination that you were talking about is whether they're, and some of it may be out of their control. Maybe it was an economics thing. Maybe it was something that that industry was going through a downturn. We've experienced that early on in our career. How are you going to get over that wall when you're dealing with something that's out of your control?
Yep.
If it's within your control, how are you going to get over that wall? And I think every business hits that.
Yeah.
And the ones that push through and get over the wall or get through the wall, they're still going. Not to say that it's going to be easy sailing from there on out, but every business owner deals with that early on. Teresa, thank you. This has been great. This has been fun. So
awesome.
Appreciate you coming on. And that's it. John Heaton with Doing Business in the Inland Empire. Thank you.